Okay, before we get started with Lesson 2, Part 2, I'd like you to think back to fractions. So think back to when you add and subtract fractions, what do we have to have? So if I wanted to add these two fractions together, what would I need? I would need common denominators, right? So how do I get that? So some students look at the 6 and the 8 and they automatically want to use 48. But is that the least common multiple or the least common denominator? So if I think of my 8, I have 8, 16, 24. If I think of my 6 facts, I have 6, 12, 18, 24. So there actually is a smaller multiple of 24. Since I like small numbers, I'm going to go with 24. But would the 48 work? Sure. All right, so to get my common denominator, there's quite a bit of work to do. I have to multiply my denominator and my numerator by the same number. And then I have to do it over here as well. So there's a lot of work involved. That's what we're going to do today. We're going to be adding fractions. But if there was a variable here, like an a and a b, well, I would just have 9b and 16a. So everything that I did here, you've already done. We're just adding those variables in there today. So think back to that when we look at our equations that we have to solve. All right, now we're ready to look at Lesson 2, Part 2, solving equations that contain fractions. So you can see here, my very first example has a fraction on every single term. But we're starting out lucky because all of my denominators are the same. So that's going to be really easy for me to clean up. So I'm going to start on this side just because there's only one fraction to look at. What would happen if I multiplied 2/8 by 8? Well, if I add a 1 down here, I'm going to cross out my 8's. So what would happen to this side of the equation? Since the 8 is gone, this 8 is gone, I end up with just a 2 because I don't really need to write it over 1. Okay, so that's what's going to happen if I multiply this term by 8. The 8's will cross simplify and all I have left is 3m. Continuing down, I'm going to multiply this term by 8. Cross simplify, I bring down a minus 6. One more time, 8, multiply this one by 8 and I end up with just my numerator. So I just got rid of my 8's by multiplying every single term by 8. So really I just kept my numerators and now I'm ready to solve my multiple step equation. I don't have anything to distribute, so I'm going to combine my like terms. 8m minus 6 equals 2. My clues and undos tells me to add 6. That's 0. 8m equals 8. And I divide by 8. Divide by 8. M equals 1. Alright, so we got rid of those fractions pretty easily on that one. So we just had to deal with our numerators. Now let's look at our other one that has unlike denominators. When you are dealing with an equation that has fractions and there are unlike denominators, so see here I have a 6, a 12, a 4, and a 6. Well, we can't just cross all those off like we did on the first one, so I had to find my least common multiple. So I went ahead and did that without you, and I found the least common multiple is 12. So I'm going to multiply each of my terms by my LCM, my 12, just like I did on that example before we got started when you are adding and subtracting fractions, you have to find the common denominator. Well, this is kind of working towards doing that. All right, so getting started. If I multiply the first term by 12, cross-simplifying isn't as easy as it was with the 8s. So when I cross-simplify on this problem, I can cross off the 6 and make it a 1, but how many times does 6 go into 12? It goes in there twice. So I'm not making the 12 a 1, I'm making it a 2. Now, what is 5a times 2? That would give me 10a. All right, on the second term, I have a 12 and I have a 12. Well, those cross-simplify to be 1, so we're left with just our numerator minus 7. Working our way down, here I have 4. Goes into 4 one time, and 4 goes into 12 3 times. And then I go ahead and multiply that out. So 3 times 3 is 9. There's a plus sign in between there, and I don't want to forget about my variable. Bring down the equal sign. Now I have a mixed number times 12, so I actually have to do my little circle dance and before I multiply. Okay, I went ahead and worked this off to the side here just so we can see what's going on this one. So I had to make it an improper fraction before I multiplied, and when I cross simplify, my 6 becomes a 1, and 6 goes into 12 2 times, so we are going to multiply this by 2. So on the right side of my equal sign, I'm going to have that negative 26. Okay, so I got rid of all my denominators, which is awesome, but I had to adjust a couple of my numerators because the denominator was different from my LCM. So quite a bit of work on this one, but now I'm ready to solve my multiple step equation. Let's get started with bringing our variable terms together. Looks like I have 19a's minus 7 equals our negative 26. Clues and undos. I do my PEMDAS backwards. So we're adding 7 to both sides. That's 7. 19a equals a negative 26 plus 7. So different signs subtract. Gives us a negative 19. And then we're going to end up with 1 again. Whoops. Divide by 19. Divide by 19. A equals negative 1. All right, I'd like to get you started with this one and show you a different strategy you can use. On that previous one, I was cross-simplifying and then changing my numerators accordingly. On this one, I want to use kind of more of the idea of common denominators. So if I wanted to make my common denominator 6, so I wanted to change all of these fractions so they had a denominator of 6, what would I have to do to each of them? So the 5x over 6 already has a denominator of 6, so I just multiply that one by 1. This one has a denominator of 2, so we would multiply the top and bottom by 2, and that would give us 4x. This one I'd times by 6 to get to 6, so I'd have to take 3 times 6 to get 18. So now I see that I have all 6's in my denominators, and like we saw with our first example with the 8's, that means I'm only going to work with my numerators. So I just wanted to show you a different way to think about how to clean up your fractions. All right, go ahead and finish this one and the one next to it with whatever strategy you liked best.